Hi all, I am this is Mr. Yeager. I'm concluding the sound unit basically with this concept of beats. It's not many slides, just a few. Kind of just an extra little topic here at the end of one type of sound interaction or wave interaction. So what beats is, I recommend like going on and looking at like YouTube or something and checking out like a beat sound. But it's this rhythmic interference, as it says, where so an oscillating interference that occurs when two notes of unequal but close frequencies are played next to each other. Okay, and what you would basically hear, I mean, in my classroom I do it, but it's this wah 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 sound, where basically it's getting louder and softer, and it occurs because we have these two frequencies that are very close to each other and could almost line up and just create perfect constructive or destructive interference, but they don't. They basically are out of sync a little bit, and therefore the constructive kind of picks up at one point and then decreases and increases and decreases. So because we have this increase and decrease in sound or with interference, we have both constructive and destructive interference occurring with beats. So it's another form of interference, basically. It's a property involving interference. So again, these are frequencies that interfere over time. Okay, over time. Okay, so that means again we have this alternating rise and fall of sound, and then so that means, since we're talking about the rise and fall of the sound and not talking about the pitch, the highness and the lowness of the sound, we're talking about how loud the sound is. We're talking about that the amplitude is going to change, and that depends on interference. Okay, so the amplitude would not change unless the waves are constructively and then vice versa destructively interfering over this time frame. All right. This is different from in terms of an interference over position, is what they're basically saying. Obviously, there might be a particular position that it could have eventually that they would then interfere. This is a regular interference over time. So time's going by and we're having interference, constructive, destructive, constructive, destructive, oscillating back and forth. All right. So this phenomenon is called beats. All right. So it's actually not a very nice sound. It's not a good beat. Okay, like we would say in terms of a good song. All right. It's something that disrupts the sound, and it's something that you're going to want to adjust to try to make sure it's clear. This is how instruments are tuned. Is people will listen for the beat frequency and determine whether they need to tighten or loosen their instrument in order to basically increase, or basically in order to decrease, obviously, that beat frequency. They don't want a beat frequency when you actually play the instrument, okay, or if you have multiple instruments playing. So the beat frequency itself, the calculation for it, is very simple. It's just the difference between the two frequencies. So my example down at the bottom here, if I have a 60 hertz and a 50 hertz wave, the beat frequency would be 10 hertz. What that means, this 10 hertz means I'm going to hear 10 beats per second. It's basically going to be this 10 times in 1 second. Okay, obviously it kind of just the sound itself will eventually just dissipate. You won't really hear it at all anymore if it's so many over time, but you'll definitely hear it when you're very, very close. Okay, and I mean you'll still hear it. It's almost like a dial tone. A dial tone is almost like a beat frequency where something's just doesn't sound right. Okay, but the beat frequency is just the difference between the two. Sometimes people overthink even that part. Okay. And so if I gave you a graph of beats, this is basically what you would see. The first one definitely, okay, is where you see this increase in amplitude and then a decrease in amplitude. So this would be low sound, this would be low volume, this would obviously be a very loud volume, so I'll just change it to soft. But you can see that we have the destructive interference and then the constructive interference also occurring back and forth. Right here, I see 2 beats. So this would be a 2-beat frequency that I would see right there because it's 1, 2, okay, essentially occurring in that time frame. Okay. What we have down here, all right, is essentially don't listen to me there. It could have multiple beats. We have to actually know what time frame it's occurring, but that does show you 2 beat sounds at once. Okay. over here, you can see where I actually drew out, not I didn't, but I have this copy of it, where you have a 100 hertz wave and a 120 hertz wave. If you look at them, they look like they're pretty close together, but the red 120 hertz wave is going up and down a little bit more frequently. But what happens is over this time frame, there are certain points where the crest meets the crest on both waves, and I get constructive interference. But what happens is eventually over time, like right here essentially, I have basically the trough in the crest, and therefore that's perfect destructive interference. And then over time again, it's going to find itself again where you're going to have crest and crest, all right, and then trough and crest. So they keep going back and forth in terms of being in phase and being out of phase is what we're looking at there. The beat frequency for this one would be 20 hertz. So that's why I was saying just a second over here, I don't exactly know the beat frequency. I only see 3 beats there. But what I'm seeing is there's going to be 20 of these in this time frame. You can see it's only 0.1 seconds go by, so that's why I don't have enough beats. There should, if I have 1 second, I'm going to see that 20 times, that bottom picture. All right. So this is how we can tune an instrument. Okay, when we hear the beat sound, the two sound sources. When you hear a beat, the two sound sources are not in tune. They don't share the same frequency. But when I hear the same pitch from both of them, I will hear that same frequency. Okay, I will hear that same frequency occur at that moment in time. All right. So sorry, the one thing I just wanted to kind of illustrate, this is really only an AP concept. Okay, so on level you're done. Okay, but for AP Physics 1, one type of question that they like to ask you is, what do you need to do to tune your instruments? Okay, I mean, obviously on level, obviously understand that it's used to tune, but you won't have to recognize this next part. You can stop the video here. So in order to tune, you got to think what's going on. So like think of basically they're usually going to use guitars. Okay, you're going to be talking about guitars in this case. So what would happen here is, let's say for instance, you're trying to reach a frequency of 20 hertz. Okay, I'm making up obviously a random pitch. Okay, 20 hertz. All right, that's very, very low. All right, but you are getting your guitar is creating an 18 hertz signal. We would hear a beat frequency of 2 hertz. All right. Now the issue is, even if you had another instrument that was at 22 hertz, you would hear a beat frequency of 2 hertz. So one thing to understand is the beat frequency alone doesn't tell you if you're above or below the required frequency, the desired frequency, until you know what that is. I mean, if you know what it is, even if you know what it is, you still don't know if you're above or below if you're hearing 2 beats, the wah-wah sound a couple times. So what can you do? Well, we talked about this before. All right, we can increase the tension in the string, and if I increase tension, I increase velocity. If I increase velocity, I increase frequency, as long as I keep the wavelength the same, which I do. The wavelength will stay constant. Okay, so what you do basically is, if you're at the 18 hertz and you start tightening the string in your guitar, you should actually see this frequency increase towards 20. You should start hearing the beat frequency even less, until you hit 20, and then basically if you tighten it too far, you'll hear it again, so you start loosening it. Vice versa. If you're on the 22 hertz side, let's say you're on that side but you don't know, and you start tightening it, what you'll start hearing is you'll hear more beats, where you're going, oh shoot, I need to go back in the opposite direction. So you start loosening, and that'll lower you back down to the appropriate frequency. So that's where AP you need to watch out for tuning is, do you need to tighten the string or do you need to loosen the string? The beat frequency by itself doesn't tell you that. You could be at 18 hertz and go, well, let me loosen it first. Well, if you loosen it, it's only going to make the beat frequency worse, so you know immediately that you need to start tightening it. So that could be an example of a free response question where you're trying to figure out how to tune the instrument appropriately. All right, thank you.